How you doing, guys? David Lewis here from the Academy. Want to go through the Leaving Cert Biology paper from 2021. I've just got my hands on it. I'm going to give you my initial thoughts and reactions to what came up, what didn't come up, what was expected, maybe a couple of things that might have surprised a number of people, and how I would have dealt with it as if I was a student sitting the paper. But firstly, what I want to say is this year, 2021, for biology was the year of organisation. The year being that if you were more organised, you could literally build your exam plan before you went into the exam itself. And it's been something that I was pushing both in my grinds and with day school students for the last 8 months. Build your exam plan. You do not have to do every question, and you should not do every question. Now, if you did, that's fine, that's okay. But you did not have to prepare for that. Now, that is positive, but it's also negative. It's also like when you come out of the exam, you've got this initial feeling, which is usually quite skewed, a little bit off from where you actually got on or how you actually got on in the paper. But because you only have to answer 8 out of 17 questions, there's potentially 9 questions on the paper you didn't do, and you might lose a little bit of sleep over that tonight. Do not. Remember, that was the advantage you had, that you were building an exam plan. Okay, so that's very, very important. I would also say I want to give props to the examiner, because it is certainly not an easy task to make an exam for this year. Not only did they have to extend the exam, give a couple of extra questions and a couple of extra choices, but they also had to fit the parameters of the original exam and make it fair for every single student who potentially missed out on certain chapters within their school. And I really feel that they gave an opportunity to a student who was organised and had the head down towards the paper. There's the opportunity for a student to do very, very well. I don't think, obviously there's a couple of weird questions or weirdly worded questions, but I don't think that any student that was, I suppose, confident with their plan going in would have been upset or could be in any way upset with what the examiner has actually given us here. So firstly, what I want to talk about is the first 7 questions, the section A. What came up here? Well, we knew at the Academy there was going to be a hard food question. We had a question exactly like that, so that came up as predicted. In fact, actually word for word it came up. We recently spoke about the nitrogen cycle as well, coming up in question 2. We said a lot of students get bogged down in the specifics of that. I was saying we didn't have to, and that proved to be the case. I would say, potentially, and I know this sounds a little bit weird, some people might have got thrown by the fact that the cycle went clockwise instead of anti-clockwise, but I'm sure that didn't really make too much of a difference. With the DNA stuff for the replication, they went back. There was the question a couple of years ago where they had a photograph, and it copped a lot of flack with students, so they went back to the actual diagrams again, and the IPMAT would have helped you out there. We then had a specific typical question on the active site theory, new diagram in there, but nothing that you should be worried of. And if you only studied Unit 1 and 2, you've just gotten full marks in Section A. So that's not that big of a deal. The female reproductive system came up, not the hormones, as we would have said before. Questions 6 and 7 were also parts of Unit 3. With question 6, it was a true or false question. A lot of students usually don't do well on that. You have to really have your concentration with you to do well in the true or false question. And the extra question, as we predicted in Section A, was from Unit 3 as well. So they're rewarding the student that studied more chapters, while not actually, I suppose, downgrading or inhibiting the student who didn't study that many. So I thought Section A was a doddle. You could have got through Section A quite quickly. With Section B, when we're talking about the experiments, this was something students were latching onto since the start of the year. I'm only going to study this one question. And that was 2 questions, and then I'm only going to study this one question over the last number of months. With question 8, the examiner did stick to a method they've been using recently, and they did stick to the mixed question. They took all the experiments and threw them together. It was mainly based around the DNA plant tissue, as you guys would have seen, which was obviously the prediction from the school. But we did say you have to study every single one of them. So you would have been highly rewarded if you followed our guidelines. Next thing, question 9, I was on the money here with this, the heat denaturation one. It was just one that hadn't appeared for a while, and with the enzymes appearing last year, I thought that was what was going to come up, so nothing crazy there. With number 10, I said the yeast was going to feature heavily. It was a bit out of left field for me with the leaf yeast itself. I didn't think that was where it was going to feature, but it was a fairly simple experiment nonetheless. If you had studied your question 10 experiments, it was probably one of the easier ones to go through. Not the IAA one, which is fantastic. With section C, The extra question was Unit 3 as well, so the examiner was rewarding people who really put a lot of work into their study. But again, the first 3 questions in Section C were Unit 1 and 2 as expected, so you would have got out the door with just Unit 1 and 2, as we've been saying all along. For question 11 is the typical ecology question, the food chain, what we call the Junior Cert English question with the suggests inside it. And then conservation, something we were pushing. We said conservation was in the news and around the time the exam itself was made. Question 12, I didn't think genetic crosses were going to come up, but I suppose the examiner wanted to give a student who had studied it an opportunity to show what they had, and I suppose the examiner was a little bit limited in that. Genetic engineering, as we did say, did come up intertwined with that question there as well. And then for question 13, photosynthesis and respiration in together. As always, the respiration question, a little bit harder. Less to learn, harder questions. For the rest of the paper, it was all Unit 3 and it was all mixed in together. I found it quite... it was quite throwing even for me as the teacher, even though I knew what was coming up in the exam, that when I got to the last 2 questions of the exam, that I only had to answer 2 out of 4 parts. So it was fantastic to see our good old pal, the amoeba, coming up for the second appearance ever. It was great to see him get a proper diagram as well. I was pretty happy to see the alveoli and the human breathing came up. I was happy to see the rhizopus again, something that you can study in just a few minutes, and I'm sure a lot of people would have taken that out. If you had studied microorganisms, that's a full question in question 17 there, because you only have to do those two different parts. Overall, that was just my first view of the paper, just taking a few minutes to go through it. As a student, I would be pretty happy. As a teacher, I am very happy with what happened. I would suggest as well, again, just to really hammer home, there will be questions that you will not have been able to do simply because you didn't do those chapters, or they weren't part of your exam plan. That doesn't matter. It's your best 8 questions from section A, B, and C. Obviously, we're going with the 4, 1 and 3 scenario. Your best 8 questions from there is what is going to be marked. If you did do any extra questions, that's fantastic. But it will have to beat your worst question if it was an extra question to affect your grade. Overall, well done. Very, very tough couple of years for you. I feel that any student that really put their head down will do well on this, and it's time for you to take your notes, throw them in the bin, and not look at biology ever again, unless obviously you do it in college, with which sense you will do it there. So anyway, I hope you have a fantastic summer. I'm happy. I hope you are. Talk to you soon. God bless.